Living the rest of your life with an underlying disability is a lot harder than you can imagine. There are many people who suffer from a physical disability, which means that they can no longer leave the house much and have to give up part of their independence. So was a man named Gene Purdie from Denver, Colorado. He lost his eyesight in his early teens, but somehow managed to live a normal life. One day, he regained his ability to see the most unexpected way ever. Before we start, can we get this video to 1,000 likes? Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Gene was not visually impaired since birth, and in fact, his eyes would function as well as those of a healthy individual. Life was good for Gene Purdie until this changed in his early teens. Gene was a high school student when he first started having vision problems. His vision gradually began to fade, and he thought he was nearsighted. But it turned out that something much more serious was going on. The little boy relied on his glasses for perfect vision. But after a few months, his condition started to deteriorate, and it was time for him to see an eye specialist to make a horrifying discovery. The boy's symptoms began to worsen within a few months after he was first diagnosed with weak eyesight. Gene visited the eye specialist with his parents, and they all hoped it was nothing serious, that their son would heal under medical supervision. But the doctor's revelation turned their world upside down. Unfortunately, after undergoing a series of tests, Gene was diagnosed with Stargardt's disease. This is one of the most common hereditary visual disorders caused by a retinal disorder. Unfortunately, there was no cure for this disease, and medicines also failed to control the symptoms. There would come a time when Gene would lose all this sight. Gene was completely blind by the time he met Joy, whom he would later marry. Joy wasn't aware of Gene's disability at the time, and she was presumed he didn't like her at all. Joy and Gene took the same course during their studies, and they also shared the same class. When the two first met and exchanged a few words, Joy learned about Gene's disability. After graduating, the couple decided to take a big step in their relationship. Gene and Joy were madly in love, and the two were all set to take the big step and seal their relationship. One of the biggest dreams this couple had together was to give birth to a child. After a few years of marriage, the couple was finally ready to add a member to their family. Not much later, they became proud parents of a boy they named Lincoln. Gene had been a foodie since he was a teenager, and he didn't just enjoy preparing his own meal. Over time, everything changed, as his disability held him back in many ways. His wife had come up with a great hack that made things much easier for Gene, allowing him to fully enjoy this hobby again. It is important to understand that Gene suffered from Stargardt's disease and that his vision was blurred and he was not blind. Despite his disability, his wife had come up with something that enabled him to see words clearly in an easy yet effective way. His wife advised him to use his cell phone, and the idea seemed to work. Gene was able to zoom in on recipes and cookbooks by using his phone's camera. He regularly surprised his wife with the new recipes he learned, but the family had yet to get the surprise of their lives. One day, Joy was watching TV in her spare time and happened upon The Rachel Ray Show. What was it about this show that sparked Joy's interest? The show's host had called a person with Stargardt's disease onto the stage, and something happened that left Joy stunned. They claimed they had a technology that could help people regain their sight. It was about people suffering from a disease. Joy was glued to her TV screen throughout the show and was simply blown away by what she saw. She was absolutely shocked at the thought that her husband would be able to see again and enjoy life to the full 100%. After the show, Joy thought about the best thing to do and decided to write Ray a letter about her husband. Joy poured out her heart in the letter she wrote to Ray. She wrote, "I began to tremble and cry for over an hour at the thought that my husband might see my face for the first time and see our son for the first time. All the family could do was anxiously await Ray's reply. Of course, they were afraid it wasn't all real, and the whole show was staged. Ray replied to Joy's letter and invited the family to his show. He asked them to come to New York for this. Gene and Joy arrived at the show, and Gene explained that he had been waiting almost 15 years for a device that would alleviate his problems. He shouldn't have to wait any longer because the device has finally been invented and hit the market. It resembles VR, virtual reality, glasses, and also contains high-definition cameras inside. Gene was asked to set up the device and try it out by simply placing it on his eyes. Gene decides to give it a try because, after all, this was the reason he had traveled all the way to New York. He puts on the device, and the image he saw was projected onto a large screen in front of the audience at home. Everyone in the room was tense, and we can only imagine how Gene must be feeling right now. Would the device work for Gene? Gene immediately turned to his wife after setting up the device, and what happened next stunned everyone present. The first thing Gene saw in 15 years was his wife Joy, who also held their son. Gene felt thousands of emotions at the same time, and the first words he said after seeing his wife were, "She is beautiful." What do you think happened after that? Joy couldn't control her emotions and started to cry. Can you blame the woman? Years of waiting, and what seemed almost impossible, was Gene's and Joy's reality today. The man had seen his wife and child for the first time, and Joy was more than happy for him too. The live audience also tried their best to hold back their tears, but Gene's story filled everyone with emotions and tears of happiness. Life isn't easy, and no one knows this better than Gene. The emotional moment was captured for the show and later uploaded on YouTube. The video went viral in no time and received thousands of views and likes. Everyone who watched the video was happy for this couple, and Gene's experience brought tears of happiness to almost every viewer. Isn't this a wonderful story? Guard! There's a lot more to come in this incredible story, as Gene and Joy have one more surprise ahead of them. It wasn't just a compliment that touched Joy's heart. She was touched by the fact that her husband could finally experience this long-awaited moment. Gene has had to wait 15 long years to experience a moment that we take for granted. Gene was finally able to see his beautiful family and the world around him, thanks to this incredible device. Just when you think Gene couldn't be happier, Ray gets another surprise. The incredible device that worked wonders for Gene is known as eyesight, and it costs a whopping $15,000. While being able to see is priceless, Gene's happiness did come with a price in this case. It's the best thing that can happen to someone who suffers from this disease, and the family didn't know at the time that they didn't have to pay a dime for this incredible device. How did that happen? Ray and her team were deeply moved by Gene and decided to donate this expensive device to Gene. The live audience supported this gesture with huge applause and whistles that echoed on the TV set. Gene gets a new and happy life in which he can see his beautiful wife without having to put together images and go through the struggles that come with it. He also doesn't have to miss a single moment of watching his son grow up. There is so much he can do now with the help of this device, and we are sure he still has a long list of things on his wish list. Gene has never lost hope in the last 16 years, and he certainly deserves these glasses. We tend to share the tiniest details of what's happening in our lives through social media, and Joy is no exception. She posted the images to Facebook account along with a photo of Gene wearing the eyesight glasses during the show. Captioning the photo, she captioned, "Thank you to Ray and the team for this priceless gift. Your show gave us a new beginning."